Hey there guys, Cubby here.
And Brandon.
We're Nerdlocker, and we got some comic book reviews for you.
We got stuff from DC and Image.
And we got some Marvel and some IDW.
We even got something from Boom.
Oh yeah.
So let's get to them.
All right guys, I got to read Before Watchmen, Night Owl, #1. And I gotta say, I was a little trepidatious on this one. This is two different characters that they're dealing with. One we've already seen in the Minutemen, and I feel that handle on that character was really perfect. It was just done well. In this one, it focuses on the second Night Owl, and while we see the first one, you don't really go into him all that much. A little bit as to how he switches over to Daniel and hands over the reins, but it just felt weird during the middle part of it. It didn't feel like it should have been written this way, but then at the end of it, it just kind of flipped and was really good. It had a strong finish, and I cannot wait for the next issue of this book. It just started off weird. So for that, I'm gonna have to knock it down a little bit. Artwork, Andy Kubert, you're amazing. Joe Kubert, your style's getting a little old. I'm sorry, you're a legend, and if you weren't around, the Kuberts wouldn't have been around, and a lot of other people would not be as good as they are. But still, the inking kind of like brought the book down a little bit for me. It made it look like an older book, and I think a book of this caliber, of this scope, should have more polish to it, more clean lines, and not all kinds of hatching all over the place. Other than that, great book, great story, great twist at the end of it, and I definitely recommend this to anyone, so I'm gonna give this 4 out of 5 Nerd Skulls. Hey there guys, I got to read Magic the Gathering, The Spell Thief, #1. Now, I'm a big fantasy fan of sword and sorcery and things like that. Magic's something I've never really gotten into. It's a lot of lore, but it's also the trading card game. I'm not into stuff like that, so I haven't really delved into it all that much. First issue of reading anything to do with the Magic lore, and it was actually pretty interesting. They have a lot of the same basic, fantasy things. I mean, I'm sure if you guys are aware of it, you know what I'm talking about. But overall, I gotta say, it just didn't engage me. It had all the things I wanted. It had all the things I wanted in the story. The artwork was actually really good compared to what I thought it would be. And I think this artist should be on maybe another book. He had kind of like an Alex Ross feel to him with his faces, his shading, things like that. But it wasn't as refined, not nearly as refined. Another thing, it just kind of was repetitive, very repetitive. You always hear about this one lady who destroyed this dude's hometown. All right, you told me in the first page, I don't need to hear about it 40 more times. It just doesn't make sense. So overall, while this book looked great and it kind of had a great backstory to it, it just didn't really pull me in and keep me engaged. So I'm only gonna give it 3 Nerd Skulls. Hey there guys, Cubby here with my comic reviews this week. I get to read Manhattan Projects #4 by John Lynn Hickman, and whoa, things are really starting to heat up in this book. You kind of see a little more info as to what Einstein's been building up to, his grand elaborate plan, his one thing that's really like bugged him. And our main character, you see him kind of figuring it out, and Einstein knows where it's going. It's really interesting the way they pace it, the way they show the flashback. It gives a whole new perspective on Einstein in this book at least, and it definitely has like a Futurama feel to it with the different dimensions. I'm not going to go into it much further, but it deals with like dimension spanning, and it has a Futurama feel to it, which was really cool. There's a couple funny, really funny jokes in this book, and overall just a really awesome artwork. Goes well with the story, just kind of fits it perfectly, especially with these trippy pages in this issue. Definitely one of my favorite books right now. Everyone needs to be reading this. I'm giving this 4.5 Nerd Skulls.
Hey guys, this is Haley with my review of Hit Girl #1, and I had to fight some guys backstage to get this one because everybody wants to see the first book of Hit Girl, and it does not disappoint. It's really interesting because this one's a little bit different because we're now hearing Hit Girl's point of view, and it is definitely interesting. She's got some it's interesting to see her try to live a normal life. Her identity is being Hit Girl, and now we're seeing her try to be a normal person, and that's her secret identity, is what we would consider a real life. And it's just so interesting to see this different world, and it doesn't disappoint because we also still get all of the other kick-ass characters that we love. It's a great book. I couldn't put it down. 5 out of 5 Nerd Skulls. Get it. Hey guys, this is Haley with my review of Flash #10. This story is more about Flash having a need for vengeance because he is looking for Patty Spivot. And unfortunately, they kind of seem to have dropped the ball a little bit on what they could have done with putting the Weather Wizard into this. It was kind of his first intro in it. And it was interesting, but I felt like it could have been a little bit better. There could have been more interactions between Flash and Weather Wizard. Now, I do have to say, though, what's really exciting is that they're promising that next issue is going to have Heatwave, who was one of my favorite villains. So this one, the one thing I will say about this one that is good is that if you haven't read it, there's a great intro of everything that's happened before. So it's actually a pretty decent jumping on point. It's just not the most exciting. I'm giving this one 3.5 Nerd Skulls. Hey, this is Haley with my review of Witchblade number 157. This book got off to a little bit of a slow start for me. It was my first intro to the story, and it really didn't pick up until she went through this portal and ended up in this interesting fairy world. Now, it's interesting, but it still wasn't the most interesting thing I've seen. It was a little bit steampunk, and I just felt like I've seen it a lot, especially now steampunk and fairies. I just wanted something a little bit more unique, but it was still an interesting read. There's a really awesome character at the very end who I absolutely enjoyed reading. It was this kind of badass female sheriff, and I really liked her point of view, but unfortunately that was kind of the only really great thing about the book. I'm gonna give it 2.5 Nerd Skulls.
What's going on, guys? Brandon here, and I got to read Spider-Man number 2. First issue was good. It was a little slow, so this one picks up, which is what I wanted to see in issue 1. It's kind of Peter Parker meeting Miles Morales, and they're fighting at first. Peter doesn't know what the hell's going on because keeps asking, "Are you Peter Parker? Are you Peter Parker? How does everyone know who Peter Parker is?" They explain that a lot. They really get into everything, and it's actually handled a lot easier and quicker than most of these kind of crossovers are handled. We find out the difference between, or the relation between Mysterio of the 616 universe that we're used to and the Mysterio of the alternate, or the Ultimate universe. It's the same person, which was kind of weird because he's been in other Ultimate Spider-Man stories and this has never been addressed. So whatever, it's still a pretty good book. Bendis does a lot of Bendis loving in this book. That's the only way I can describe it. Kind of pats himself on the back a couple times, but I guess that's to be expected at this point with him. But it's a good read. If you like the first one, I'd pick this up, and I'm going to continue reading. I'm giving it 4 out of 5 Nerd Skulls. All right, I got to read Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, number 11. This is such an awesome book. This continues to be awesome. We've got Splinter throwing down with all the Foot Ninjas and Shredder, and we have the Ninja Turtles looking for Splinter. There's a lot of buildup in this. By the time I actually got to the last page, I was actually like, oh man, be continued? It's awful. I want to see this fight now. They really do a good job of this. There's a lot of good dialogue. This is just all around a very well done issue. I'm giving it 5 out of 5 Nerd Skulls. I got to read Hypernaturals number 1 from Boom Studios. It's not a bad book, actually. I usually go into these kind of independent superhero books a little differently. They usually have a harder time grabbing me than regular DC Marvel books do. But this isn't a bad book. It starts out with the Hypernaturals, and they kind of talk about it being a group around forever. I mean, they've been around for a very long time, and this is the current lineup. And they're facing off with a bad guy, and then boom, we're shot into the future where it looks like the team we just saw on the first couple pages is no more. They're not explaining everything that happened, but it looks like there was a falling out, and it looks like they're gonna have to kind of get the group back together, which may not be a good thing, partly because a lot of the people aren't really into what they used to be. I mean, most of the heroes you see at the beginning now go by different names and say that the superhero name is not who they are anymore, and it's not a bad book. I would definitely pick it up. I'm giving it 4 out of 5 Nerd Skulls.
Hey guys, Aquaman number 10 came out this week, which is part 4 in the Other series. The Other storyline has been catching us up with the old teammates of Aquaman when he was a young superhero. They are being hunted down by his ultimate enemy, Black Manta, right now, so he's trying to go up against him. So that answers a lot of questions as to his past and why Black Manta hates Aquaman and why Aquaman hates Black Manta, but it also asks some other intriguing questions like where Dr. Shin has been and how he is tied to both Aquaman and Black Manta's past. And of course they throw the sexy Mary in there, of course, so it's really good. I'm going to give this book 3.5 Nerd Skulls. So Whispers number 3 came out this week. If you guys have checked out my previous reviews, I haven't really been too excited about where this book has been going just because I didn't think the actual storyline was strong enough to warrant a long story arc. But with issue 3, it actually takes it to a whole new level and it makes the book darker, which, as you know, I love dark books and I want to continue reading where this goes. Joshua Luna both draws it and writes the book, and he's gotten much more detailed with the way he draws his characters, so that's a big plus. So I'm going to give this book 5 out of 5 Nerd Skulls.
All right, that's going to do it for this week's comic book reviews. If there's any comics you want us to review, let us know in the comments below. But until next week, be sure to check us out on Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, and nerdlocker.com for all your nerdy news. I'm Brandon.
And I'm Cubby.
And we'll see you next week for more comic book reviews.